She had paid for first class, but the look she got said, "You don't belong." "Ma'am, I'll need to see your boarding pass again." Naomi Ellis looked up mid-text, her thumb hovering over her phone. She'd just been confirming her hotel check-in with her assistant in Silverview when the gate agent's sharp voice cut into her thoughts. It wasn't just what he said, it was the way he said it. Flat, dismissive, like he'd already decided she didn't belong in the line she was standing in, like her very presence in the first-class queue was disrupting the natural order. Without skipping a beat, Naomi offered a composed smile and extended the digital pass from her phone. "Of course. Here you go." The man examined it a fraction of a second too long, his expression unreadable. "And your ID?" he asked. She raised an eyebrow, barely, but reached into her tote without protest. "Sure." As he looked over the documents, Naomi scanned her surroundings. It was early afternoon at Everhart Regional Airport. The first-class line wasn't even crowded. One businesswoman ahead of her, headphones on. Behind her, a man in khaki shorts balancing a lukewarm coffee and an old tablet. Everything up until now had been seamless. Pre-check had been smooth, no luggage to check. Her assistant had made sure she'd gotten a window seat. Naomi always preferred a little solitude before major meetings. And this meeting tomorrow? It wasn't just any pitch. A potential partnership with a clean tech firm could catapult her company into international markets. She'd worked with venture capitalists before, but this mattered more. Still holding her ID and boarding pass, she felt the agent's gaze sweep over her again. It wasn't the kind that made her feel seen. It was the kind that measured her, sizing up, not flirting. "You sure you're in the right line, ma'am?" Naomi blinked, then let out a small, humorless laugh. Just a breath, really. The kind that says, "You've got to be kidding me." "I'm sorry?" she asked, though she had nothing to apologize for. "This is priority boarding, first class," he repeated, like she might have misread the signs on her way up. Her expression didn't waver. "I'm aware. That's what my ticket says." He looked from the screen beside him back to her. "Right. I'm going to need a moment." Before she could even respond, the man in khaki shorts stepped up beside her. "Hey, boarding open yet?" he asked. The agent's tone did a complete 180, friendly, inviting. "Absolutely, sir. Right this way." He didn't ask for a ticket, didn't ask for ID, just waved him through like a VIP. Naomi watched the man stroll down the jet bridge. She glanced at the screen the agent had been peering at. Same flight, same seat section. She already knew what was happening, but some part of her still didn't want to believe it. The agent, Brent, according to his badge, looked back at her, eyes avoiding hers now. "Looks like there's been a seat reassignment. I'm going to have to ask you to step aside while we sort this out." Her voice remained even, low. "That's not a reassignment. That's my seat. And that man just boarded with it." Brent gave her that look, the one people give when they want you to stop making things uncomfortable. She wasn't yelling, wasn't being rude, but somehow she had become the problem. "Ma'am, please step aside so we can continue boarding." She did step aside, but not because he was right, because she knew how quickly things could spiral when a black woman refused to comply. From the side of the gate, Naomi pulled out her phone, took a breath, the kind she'd learned to take in places where her presence always raised unspoken questions. The same breath she took in a boardroom in Eastlake when an investor cut her off mid-pitch to question whether she truly understood the algorithm she'd built. The same breath she took in a living room in Langford when the wife of a potential partner assumed she was catering the event. Different city, same script. But today wasn't going to end like those other days. She was tired, but she wasn't powerless. "Is there a supervisor I can speak with?" Naomi asked, calm but firm, her phone still in her hand. Now less a tool, more a shield. Brent sighed like she'd asked him to rewire the airport's electrical grid. "I already told you, there's nothing I can do." "I'm not asking what you can do," Naomi replied. "I'm asking for your supervisor." There was a pause. Then, as if on cue, a second agent appeared from behind the counter. This one, a woman in her 30s, hair in a tight bun, glasses slipping slightly on her nose. Her name tag read Melinda. She approached with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hi there. I understand there's a concern about a seat assignment." Naomi nodded once. "There's no concern. There's a mistake. I booked seat 2A, checked in, and showed both my ID and pass. That seat was just given to someone else." Melinda turned to the monitor and began typing. Naomi glanced at Brent, who now wore a tight expression like a child being corrected in public. Melinda's brow furrowed, though her voice remained polished. Yes, I see your name. Seat 2A. But it looks like there's been a system update. Your seat's been reassigned." Naomi's tone sharpened, not in anger, but in precision. "Without notifying me?" Melinda didn't answer right away, and Naomi knew this wasn't about a glitch. It wasn't about logistics. It was about a pattern where people like her were questioned first, accommodated last, and often left to pick up the pieces in silence. But not today. Melinda hesitated. Naomi didn't. "Let's not pretend," Naomi said, her voice firm yet steady. "That man walked through with no ID, no questions. I was standing right here." "I understand your frustration," Melinda began, rehearsed, like she'd said it 100 times that day. "No," Naomi cut in. "You understand how to avoid a scene. That's not the same." Melinda's practiced smile wavered, her hands folded neatly on the counter. "Unfortunately, there are no remaining seats in first class. We can offer you a premium economy seat and a travel voucher for the inconvenience." Naomi's laugh was sharp, empty of humor. "A voucher?" "Yes," Melinda replied, almost robotic. "For the inconvenience." Naomi tilted her head slightly, voice dipped in irony. "You've just publicly told a black woman, one who clearly belongs here, that she doesn't. You gave her seat to someone else, no explanation, no apology. And now you're offering her a coupon like she's grocery shopping?" Melinda said nothing. Brent, still at the counter, pretended to read the screen again, his face a perfect mask of disinterest, but his body language screamed discomfort. Around them, the waiting area had gone quiet. Naomi could feel the stares. Not all were hostile. Some were merely curious. Others, she could sense, were unsure, watching, judging, weighing whether she was overreacting. A man, a few rows back, leaned in to whisper something to his wife. Naomi saw the woman shake her head. She took a long breath, not out of ego, not to prove anything. She didn't need the seat to validate who she was, but what she wouldn't do was let this go. Not this time. Turning slightly away from the counter, she scrolled to a contact and dialed. "Naomi," came a steady voice on the other end. "Darius," she said quietly. "I need you to check which active contracts we have under Sterling Air Group." There was a short pause. "The airline?" "Yes." I want to know if they're still within compliance. Pull all existing audits. Call a session with the compliance team within the hour." Another pause. "Understood." She ended the call and turned back. Melinda looked confused. Brent looked nervous. "Naomi?" She was calm now, but in a different way. The kind that comes when you know you've just shifted the ground beneath someone's feet. "I'll wait," she said, eyes steady. "You let me know how this is going to play out. I'm not going anywhere." From the corner, a quiet figure emerged. A young black woman, maybe college-aged, walked over from a nearby gate. She didn't say anything, just handed Naomi a sealed bottle of water and gave her a small, understanding nod before turning away. Naomi whispered a gentle, "Thank you," and sat down in a nearby seat, her tote bag resting beside her, ankles crossed. Still poised, still waiting. She didn't have her seat, but now the airline didn't have her silence. What they didn't know, what they never imagined, was who Naomi Ellis truly was. The flight departed without her. No apology, no explanation, not even a courtesy update from the gate team. Naomi sat in the lounge by a large glass window, watching the plane taxi toward the runway. Seat 2A, the one she paid for, was now halfway to Westmont, occupied by someone who didn't have to prove a thing. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She opened her laptop. 10 minutes later, a virtual session loaded on her screen. 3 familiar faces appeared. Darius, her legal director. Leona, head of operations. Devin, systems and digital infrastructure. Naomi didn't waste time. They reassigned my seat, gave it away, no notice. I was asked, twice, if I was sure I belonged in the first-class line. Leona's lips pressed into a thin line. "Again?" Naomi nodded. "Again." Darius leaned forward. "Same airline we flagged last quarter for treatment inconsistencies at boarding gates?" "Same one," Naomi confirmed. "Sterling Air Group. They own Crestline Air, right?" Devin asked. "We started onboarding their DEI contract 6 weeks ago," Darius added. "Full review was scheduled for next quarter." "Want to move it up?" Devin asked. Naomi didn't answer right away. She looked around the lounge. Quiet, curated comfort. Complimentary fruit. Soft music playing. Her chest felt tight. Like so many professionals who looked like her, she'd been taught to nod politely when disrespected, to smile when dismissed, to keep her voice calm and her presence non-threatening. Today, that wasn't going to be enough. "Yes," she said. "Push the audit forward. Start reviews tonight." She turned back to Darius. "Make sure legal prepares a report. I want every public-facing contract reviewed for policy compliance." He nodded. "Got it." "Make them answer to the standards they hired us to build," Naomi added. "They wanted our name on their diversity campaign. Now they'll get the work behind it." The meeting ended. Naomi closed her laptop and sat in silence. She thought about her mother, who worked long shifts at 2 jobs so Naomi could graduate without debt. She thought about her first job out of college, where she was mistaken for an intern. Twice. She thought about the time a white client told her, "You're so articulate," as if it were a surprise. She had learned to let things slide, to diffuse the tension, to keep things smooth and palatable, but that wasn't calm. That was containment. She picked up her phone again. One message to her assistant. Cancel the hotel, move the meeting to Zoom. This just became more important. Somewhere across the terminal, a pilot passed in uniform, nodding politely as he walked by. He didn't know who she was. Neither did the couple at the vending machine, or the businessman loudly arguing on his phone. But they would. No one in the terminal knew who Naomi Ellis was. Not the couple locked in an argument near Gate 14, not the old man snoozing beside a rack of magazines. But by the next day, they all would. Her team had already logged in. Through a compliance agreement signed just weeks earlier, Equitas Insight, Naomi's data-driven audit firm, had legitimate back-end access to Crestline Air's internal systems. What they found was damning. 19 recorded complaints tied to discriminatory behavior at boarding gates in the last 12 months. 7 of them included the same phrase, "Are you sure you're in the right line?" Darius drafted the memo. Leona compiled the documentation. By morning, a certified report was sent straight to the Executive Compliance Board at Sterling Air Group. Naomi didn't attach a cover letter. She didn't have to. The data was loud enough on its own, because silence, that would have been their win. By the next afternoon, phones rang in 3 corners of the country. In Fairview, Summit City, and Nor Hollow, executives at Sterling Air Group were reading the subject line they hadn't expected. Preliminary audit findings. Immediate review required inside. A clean and clinical summary outlined each flagged incident. Attached were time-stamped video clips, unresolved HR complaints, and ignored employee statements. What couldn't be dismissed was the pattern. There were no emotional appeals. Naomi didn't need emotion. She had evidence. And investors? They didn't get nervous over outrage. They got nervous over numbers. Back at Equitas Insight's headquarters in Riverton, Naomi sat in the very conference room she'd designed herself. Glass walls, no frills, no distractions, just focus. She preferred it that way. Work needed clarity. So did justice. Leona entered the room, iPad in hand, eyes wide. They responded. Naomi didn't look up. Who? Sterling's COO wants to schedule an urgent call. Naomi leaned back, folding her arms. Of course he does. She took a breath, steady and grounded. Schedule it for tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific, not a minute earlier. Leona blinked. You sure? Naomi's eyes sharpened. Oh, I'm very sure. This wasn't pettiness, it was precision. She'd been told her whole life to wait her turn, to stay quiet, to be polite. Now it was their turn to wait. By that evening, Sterling Air Group was already in crisis mode. Media consultants were huddled in closed-door meetings, spitballing talking points in case the story leaked. Legal debated how to frame it as a misunderstanding, without admitting fault. Someone in the room even suggested offering Naomi a future flight credit. Another said, she probably just wants to feel heard. They were wrong. Naomi didn't want a coupon. She wanted accountability. While the airline scrambled, her team kept moving. Not for revenge, but because this was exactly what Equitas Insight was built to do. And to be clear, Equitas wasn't some feel-good initiative handing out brochures on diversity. Naomi had built it from the ground up into a no-nonsense audit firm, the kind that Fortune 500 companies hired to find cracks in their internal structures and force them to fix what they wanted to ignore. Now, they were the ones under the microscope. Later that night, Darius arrived at the office, coat slung over one arm, glasses fogged from the misty Riverton air. We found something else, he said as he stepped into the conference room. Naomi sat up. What is it? He handed over a printed email. One of their district managers flagged Everhart Regional for inconsistent ID checks last fall, said the pattern could appear discriminatory depending on the passenger. Naomi skimmed the email. Her jaw tensed. They didn't act on it. Darius shook his head. Buried the report. said they'd offer additional training if needed. No action taken. Naomi rarely cursed. She didn't have to. Her silence did the job. "This isn't a mistake," she said slowly. "It's a system, one they've been warned about." "Exactly," Darius replied. "This isn't a bad apple situation. It's the whole tree." Just then, her phone buzzed. A text from her brother. "Saw what's happening on X. You good?" She smiled faintly and replied, "Always." The story was spreading. Not because she reached out to the press, but because someone at the gate had filmed it. No edits, no hashtags. Just the raw moment a black woman was asked if she belonged. Over and over again, with different words. It struck a nerve. Not because it was rare, but because it wasn't. By Friday morning, Sterling Air Group was trending. Not the kind of trending brands want. The hashtag was simple. Seat for Naomi. But it wasn't just about her anymore. Thousands were sharing their own experiences. Missed flights, unnecessary pat-downs, whispered assumptions at the gate. The slow, silent toll of being made to prove you deserve what you've already paid for. The comments weren't full of outrage. They were full of recognition. Naomi's story was familiar to too many. The quiet dismissals, the subtle slights, the coded language, the invisible scars. That afternoon, the airline released a public statement. "We are aware of the incident involving Ms. Naomi Ellis and are currently reviewing all internal procedures and customer service protocols at gate checkpoints. We sincerely apologize for the inconvenience and any distress caused." Naomi stared at the screen. "Inconvenience," she murmured. Across the room, Leona looked up. Still not using the word. Naomi didn't take her eyes off the statement. "Which one?" "You know which one." She did. Discrimination. They couldn't say it, because once they did, everything shifted. It wouldn't be a bad interaction anymore. It would be a legal liability. But the truth? It was already too late. The proof had been sent. The data was real. And deep inside the inboxes of Sterling's leadership, executives who once dismissed bias concerns were now forwarding internal emails that ended with quiet acknowledgments. "We've seen this before. She's not the only one. We need to respond. Seriously." Naomi didn't smile at their panic. She didn't gloat. That wasn't the point. She didn't want them destroyed. She wanted them changed. The airline statement finally dropped. "We are aware of the incident involving Ms. Naomi Ellis and are actively reviewing internal policies related to gate operations and passenger service. We apologize for the inconvenience and distress caused." There it was again. Inconvenience. Naomi stared at the screen, lips pressed tightly together. Across the office, Leona broke the silence. "They still won't use the word." Naomi didn't blink. "Which one?" Leona's voice dropped. "Discrimination. Of course. Saying it would change everything. It wouldn't just be an unfortunate experience. It would be a legal liability, a civil storm, a conversation they couldn't control. But whether they said it or not, the evidence was already in their inbox. Every document Naomi's team had compiled, every testimony, every ignored complaint. Quietly, other executives, ones who hadn't spoken up before, had begun replying to the audit files with private notes. "We've seen this before. This isn't isolated. It's a culture issue." 3 days ago, Naomi had been just another black woman holding a first-class boarding pass. Now, she was the reason Sterling Air Group's internal culture had become a national conversation. That afternoon, 2 senior executives were placed on indefinite leave. Melinda, the supervisor at the gate, was quietly reassigned. Brent, the original gate agent, was gone. No announcement. His profile scrubbed from the company portal. By Monday, Naomi still wasn't smiling. This had never been about revenge. She didn't want their careers destroyed. She wanted them to remember, to be forced to see what they had refused to acknowledge, that who people are is not always who they're expected to be. Equitas Insight released one statement, just one. Every system protects what it was built to serve, until someone holds it accountable. We thank our partners who choose transparency over comfort. No interviews, no sound bites, no press tour. Naomi declined every single request. Instead, she called a full staff meeting. Everyone came. Analysts, interns, engineers, operations leads, no titles, just people. Naomi stood before them. No microphone, no presentation, only her voice. This was never about a seat, she said. It never has been. She paused, letting that land. It was about the look on that agent's face when he decided, before I even opened my mouth, that I didn't belong. She looked around the room. And the thing is, I'm not special. This happens every single day, to people who don't have lawyers, who don't have followers or platforms. Most of them walk away, because proving you belong in a space that constantly questions your right to be there. She shook her head gently. It's exhausting. Silence fell. No one interrupted. They all knew what she meant. We won't fix it overnight, she said, but we can fix it. One boardroom at a time, one policy at a time, one story at a time. She gave a small smile. So, get some rest. Monday, we work. The applause that followed wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. It was solid. It was real. They felt the weight of what they were building, and what they had just begun to move. Back at the airport, no new signs had been posted. No special training had started. No emails had gone out to staff. But something had shifted. Now, when a gate agent paused before asking a passenger to step aside, they paused a little longer. Because now, they understood what could happen next. And that was a start. But Naomi Ellis wasn't done, not even close. Monday morning came softly. The sun had barely crept over Riverton's skyline. The city was still stretching awake, but Naomi was already in the office, coffee in hand, hair pulled back, dressed simply, black slacks, white blouse, no labels, no flash, just focus. She stood alone in the conference room, eyes on the whiteboard. 2 words were circled in thick blue marker. Expect better. Darius walked in, carrying a folder. It's done, he said. Sterling's compliance team signed off. Full DEI audit, mandatory, external observers. First round starts Thursday. Naomi nodded, her eyes still on the board. She didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then, finally, funny thing about all this. Darius raised a brow. Yeah? I didn't plan for it, she said, voice soft. I just wanted to get on a flight, pitch clean energy data, go home. Darius let out a small laugh. And instead, you dragged a billion-dollar company into a reckoning. Naomi smirked. Wasn't the plan. He grinned. But it was the point. She didn't respond, just turned back to the board, still staring. Outside the room, the rest of the team began to trickle in, some still bleary-eyed from the long weekend, others energized from the firestorm of the last few days. But all of them knew. This Monday wasn't like the rest. This was a pivot, a shift in the wind. Leona walked in last, a folder tucked under her arm. We've got interest, she said, Smaller regional carriers, companies we've never even spoken to before. They're watching the headlines. Naomi took the folder, flipped through the reports, and shut it with a soft thud. "We'll help them," she said, "but they don't get to skip the work." Naomi looked around the room. Her team gathered, no titles in sight, just hearts and minds ready for the work ahead. "I want us to stop accepting performative nonsense," she said plainly. "I don't want applause for companies that post black squares once a year or tweet empty lines about how much they value diversity." Heads nodded. No one blinked. "I want numbers. I want structure. I want action, not apologies." For a moment, silence wrapped around them. Then a voice from the back broke through. It was Jalen, one of the junior analysts, just a few months out of college, fresh-faced, nerves buzzing behind his polite posture. He raised his hand halfway. "Can I ask you something?" Naomi turned to him, warm but serious. "Always?" He cleared his throat. "Were you scared? At the gate? In that moment?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "I wasn't scared," Naomi said softly. "I was tired. Tired of walking into rooms where I had to prove my existence was legitimate before I'd even said a word." Jalen nodded. "I feel that." Naomi's expression softened. "We all do." A quiet beat passed. Then she continued, her voice steady. "That's why we don't let this die in a tweet. That's why we build something that outlasts all of us." Later that night, the office was still. The team had gone home. The city lights shimmered through the wide windows, casting gentle reflections on the polished floors. Planes blinked across the night sky, distant and rhythmic, like a memory that refused to fade. Naomi sat alone at her desk. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother. "Proud of you, always." Naomi smiled, a long, quiet kind of smile, the kind that comes after years of holding your breath and finally exhaling. For so long, she'd tried to let her work speak silently, to make change without disruption, to move the needle without making waves, no headlines, no drama, just data, diligence, and discipline. Let the systems change quietly, she'd told herself. But now she understood something deeper. Sometimes people don't listen until you make them uncomfortable, until you shed the calm mask they've come to expect, until you stop shrinking in the name of keeping the peace, and let them see exactly what's been there all along. She thought back to the gate agent, his smirk, the assumption, the dismissal, then to the young woman at the airport who handed her that bottle of water. A silent act of defiance. No speech, no applause, just presence, just solidarity. Not all heroes wear capes. Some simply stay seated, right where they paid to be. Naomi leaned back in her chair. Let her thoughts settle like dust in warm sunlight. Then she reached for a pen. On a fresh page in her notebook, she wrote, "The system won't fix itself, but neither will I back down." That was the real message. Not revenge, not noise, but dignity, earned and defended. Because stories like Naomi's, we all carry them. Some are loud, shouted through protest and pain. Others are invisible. Quiet burdens hidden behind patient smiles and whispered reassurances. But silence? Silence won't save us. If you've ever been overlooked, talked over, mistaken, excluded, if you've ever been told you don't belong or asked to prove that you do, know this: you do, and you don't need permission to stand up for yourself. Speak up, write it down, build with purpose. And when your moment comes, when you've pushed that door open wide enough to walk through it, Hold it open for the next person who looks like you. Because respect isn't handed out like coupons. It's claimed, it's defended, and when necessary, it's reclaimed.